I have my own signed copy. Thank you. It's a real honor to be here. Some of you may not like me by the time I leave here today, particularly some legislators in my own lovely state of Maine. But I do want to start out by saying this. ALEC is very important to America. ALEC, this copy I just showed you is the 8th edition. It's very, very important to America to make the distinction between a rich state and a poor state. I was born in Maine, educated in Maine, and I've worked my whole life in Maine trying to get us out of poverty. I have been successful in business. Was pretty successful getting off the streets. It wasn't easy, but it is what it is. You play the cards you're dealt. The ranking by state shows lawmakers throughout the country, those who are making it and those who are not. We no longer compete as Americans. We no longer compete against each other. We now compete against each other and against the globe. We compete around the world. And I have been told so many times by both being in the majority in the House, in the Senate, being in the minority in the House and the Senate, being now we have the Senate and we don't have the legislature. And quite frankly, I will be very honest to you, from the perspective of a governor, I would rather be in the minority than the majority. And I'll tell you why. In the minority, you all work together to get things done because you have to, because you got to protect the veto. In the majority, doesn't make any difference. You're told what to do as a governor, and if you don't buy in, you're the enemy. And I have been the enemy to my legislature since March of 2014. Now, why am I the enemy? Well, this is why. On April 15th of this year, ALEC was in Maine, and we were to release the 8th edition of the Rich States, Poor States. If you look in there and you look in the last 8 editions, Maine has never been below 40, ever. I can tell you, Maine started going really downhill in 1969. In 1969, we had a governor named Ken Curtis who brought us the income tax. Today, Mr. Curtis is retired in Florida. Yeah. I just came back from there. I'm getting ready to retire there too. Because you can't do it alone, folks. You know, our federal government is $18 trillion in debt. $18 trillion that is going to be left to my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. They will not, if we continue on the path we are, they will never experience the American dream the way I have been able to. I have come from the streets to become the governor of my state. Modest achievement in my books. Donald Trump became a billionaire. But he'll never be president. In my state, we fight for minimum wage. We just defeated a $15 an hour minimum wage request in November. It's coming back next November. 6,000 people out of 803,000 people live on the minimum wage in the state of Maine, have a permanent job, minimum wage. And I will tell you, one of them is a very honorable job, because I was doing it at 12 years old, washing dishes in a restaurant and serving tables. What they don't tell you is that when you serve tables, your average wage in Maine is $18 an hour. But nobody wants to talk about that. They want to increase the minimum wage. I'll tell you why I'm against it. Because Maine's the oldest state in America. We are the oldest state in America. We're a 44, median age of 44 years. I passed that a few years ago. I think my son's 25. I passed it even further than that. The problem is this. If you increase the minimum wage and you don't look at anything else of improving government, you are, in fact, hurting the people that you want to help, which is your parents, your uncles and your aunts, your grandparents, because they're on a fixed income. So I was on radio one day, and this lady calls in, and I said, you can't increase the minimum wage to $15 because when you go, the elderly, when they go out once a week, go to the coffee shop to have their little morning chit-chat, their coffee's going to double. The lady called in on the radio, and she says, Governor, you're so wrong. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is they simply have to sell more coffee. Okay. In fact, in Maine recently, last week since I was away, nobody drinking Tim Hortons coffee, so all the shops from Augusta south have been closed. Think about it. What are we doing? So organizations like ALEC allow me the opportunity to try to convince my legislature that we have to get rid of the income tax. I've been working on it since 2010. They told me it was not possible. And matter of fact, when I lowered the income tax the first time, they said, if the governor tries to lower the income tax, he's lying to Maine people. We lowered the income tax. It was only by 55 basis points, but it was the largest tax decrease in the history of our state because we didn't know how to decrease. We only know how to increase. We increased it, we decreased it by 55 basis points. 70,000 people no longer have to pay income tax because they make $20,000 or less. Because in Maine, the maximum marginal rate, you hit it at $20,000. If you made $19,990, you paid 8.5% income tax. It's gone. Now we only have two rates. I want to eliminate it totally. And that's where I've been having some difficulty with my legislature. Incidentally, I want to tell you, there's three types of legislators in the country. It makes no difference. I've spoken to 31 or 32 Republican governors, folks. I don't claim to be a Republican or a Democrat. I am probably what you would call a social libertarian and a fiscally responsible administrator. But let me get back to the three types of legislators. First type, and it's about a third, and a third. A third of your legislators are elected, and they really want to help the people of their state or the people of the nation. They go there with all kinds of character and integrity. That's about 1/3. The next third, they start out with character and integrity, and they go to the Capitol and they try to do legislation, and then their ego gets into a battle with their character and their integrity. And they see that there's a path to enrich themselves. So you lose them because they become more interested in what they're going to do. But those aren't the dangerous ones. Those aren't bad. You can deal with those on a day-to-day basis. Most difficult, and the one thing that I cannot stand in government is a person who's elected, comes to government, and fills a chair for 2 years, and they do exactly what they're told by leadership and never open their mouths. That is bad for your state. That is bad for our country. And we need, as Americans, we need to do a better job vetting people who go to Augusta or to Washington or to Tallahassee. We just need to make sure that they're working for us. Maine, we got $1.2 billion of income tax. I put that back in people's pocket. Number one, it's not inflationary. People can spend their money the way they choose to spend their money, not the way we want them to spend the money. We must stop government from taking money from hardworking Americans and then spend it at their wishes. I'll give you a little example of how silly legislators can be. Right now I have 32 we're short 32 people in our state police who do much of the work with drugs. We have an epidemic in Maine with drugs. We're losing approximately one person a day to overdose, and 3 babies a day are being born addicted to drugs. We have a shortage in our state police. In March of 2014, I asked for 10 DEA agents. So they decided they're going to get back at me and punish me for not listening to them. So they gave me a cold case squad. Yeah, they did. I got 3 new cold case squad. So now I have to follow the law, so those 3 people now go from state police into a special unit called a cold case, and they only work on cold cases. So folks, now I'm 35 people short. I am now going into the second session, 35 people short, and we can't keep up with the drugs. I had a young man in high school before I left to go to Florida. He's a junior in high school. And in 1 week, he got 3 shots of Narcan at school in 1 week. Think about that problem. Are we saving lives? Or are we extending lives? Is what I ask legislators around the state. What are we truly doing here? Because we spend over $76 million in treatment, $3 million in law enforcement. We are ignoring the pipeline of people who come up to 95. And you know, these guys, they all got great names. Smoothie, Shifty, PK. These are the people we're picking up. Now, we pick them up and we make them guests of the state. And I got a letter from Governor Malloy in Connecticut thanking me for getting them off the streets of Connecticut. That's the problem in America today. We aren't doing good public policy. We're doing enough policy to get elected in the next 2 years. That's the problem. We're only doing public policy to get reelected. You know, in 2010, I won by 2 points. The night before the election, in November of last year, the night before the election, I was the least likely to get reelected. I was behind Tom Corbett in Pennsylvania. The unions came in and threw just a bunch of money at us to try to take us out. Not only did we win, but I set a record for the most votes given a governor in the history of the state of Maine. Not because I'm the smartest governor in America, but I'm honest. I am brutally honest. Have you ever seen this commercial where Mary Todd asks Abe, does this just make me look fat? That's me. Just a little. My wife is constantly telling me that I'm too honest. Even a little white lie sometimes will save you a lot of grief. That's why in the state of Maine, I do have a better relationship with my legislature than I do with the press, though. The daily press in Maine are so bad that I don't even believe the obituaries. So what are we doing to solve this problem with taxes? Well, I've decided, I've told my staff, we obviously aren't making any headway in the legislature. Let's see if we can do it on the streets. So since the legislature has gone out of session in June, I've been holding town hall meetings. I do 1 or 2 a week, get audiences anywhere between 50 and a couple hundred people, different parts of the state. I intend to continue to do it until November of 2016 through election. And we have, the Republican Party have put a bill up to cut the income tax to 4%. When I left the state to go on vacation, it was polling at 82%. If you tell them the truth, they react. Somebody here today, good friend, known him for many, many years, tells me that he didn't vote for my budget because he was afraid government was going to shut down. Well, it's not easy to shut a government down. It takes 1 of 3 people. It takes the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate. They could have done it. But I would have continued working until the money went dry. So saying that you're going to shut government down is the rhetoric that I have listened to for 50 years. Folks, it's all about doing what's right for your constituent. Whether you're from Illinois, Florida, Texas, I don't care where you're from. It's about the people who live in your state, the people who earn a living in your state, who hire you as a constituent, who send you to do a job. Your job is to do it. There are 2 things in my vocabulary. One is when somebody comes to me and said, why aren't you doing it? You should be doing this and that. And I'll say, why? Tell me why I need to do it. And then the next question is, can you find it in the yellow pages? Because if it's in the yellow pages, government shouldn't be doing it. So my wife tells me I'm too principled. She says, sometimes you just got to bite it and just forget about it. But the problem with that is this. Good public policy is good politics. If it's not good public policy, it means it's got to be bad public policy. And I'm not in the game. I'm in there to do one thing. I'm there to do things right and to do the right things for the people who put me in office. And with that, I'll answer a few questions before the real speaker comes up. You're in for a treat. Any questions? Well, let's put it this way. We've made a decision, rather than to go after it all at once because I only have 3 more years, is to put us into a position where we can be more competitive. So we're lowering the question that we have on the ballot is twofold. Is going to lower the income tax to 4%, and it's going to continue to reform welfare. And I didn't speak about welfare, but I'll tell you, we are doing marvelous things with a program called Welfare to Work, and it is working. I'm telling you, it works. What we do, just quickly, is we're looking to lower the income tax to 4%, and we're taking people on welfare, and when they register with DHHS. We have the education people and the work people and the veterans all in the same building. And so it's a full comprehensive interview process, and we look at whatever skills that are available that we can work on. We move on those skills and get them into work. So yes, ultimately, if we can continue having an 80% polling factor with the income tax will be gone despite what the legislature says. Yes, sir.
Governor, no doubt don't use federal regulators to make people happy in this room. There's an effort now backed by 5 state legislators and 3 other governors to mobilize states to persuade Congress to propose something called the Regulation Freedom Amendment. And the 15 state legislators came to already passed resolutions urging Congress to propose the amendment that would require the Congress to do major federal regulation. Any thoughts on that idea?
Yes. Let me tell you what I've come to the conclusion in my administration this last year. I simply said this: if we can't get anything done upstairs through the legislature, then what we got to do is take a look at the Constitution, look at what the executive powers are, and to do everything we can to run government through the executive branch and let the people tell the legislators what they want. So the answer is yes. I am for smaller government. I am for smaller regulation, less regulations, particularly on one that the House passed yesterday is going to be dealing with Common Core. People can opt out now without a whole lot of fanfare. We just need to get it through the Senate. But the answer is absolutely, I'm all in for less regulations. Let's go back to letting people work, decide how to spend their money, and let's sit on the other side just rake in the money. Yes, sir.
Governor, would you reconsider your plans of moving to Florida and instead move to New Hampshire and run for governor there? Please?
Well, I would love to, but, you know, despite Maggie Hassan, the legislature there has been keeping the income tax out. If you look at the states without an income tax, you know, like Florida, Texas, South Dakota, Alaska, we don't have to look nationally. We just go down to a southern border and look at New Hampshire. Their economy is very prosperous. They're having the same problem we are, except that we are underemployed and they're overemployed. And so I tried to invite them to Maine, because Maine's such a much more beautiful place. Incidentally, your next meeting, I invite you all to have Alex have it up at Maine. We could go to Point Lookout, which is the most beautiful place on earth, except if you look to your right, you might see a couple of windmills, but we're going to try to wash them out. Yes, sir.
Governor, you made a presentation with Governor Kasich about moving forward in your state with an application under Article 5 for a balanced budget amendment. And I wonder if you can talk about how you can be one of the last 7 states needed to convene a convention of the states for the purpose of stopping the federal government from bankrupting our country.
I would be all in. Unfortunately, it's not just the governor. I have a legislature. I have had, since I've been the governor, 3 biennial budgets, several supplemental budgets. Incidentally, supplemental budgets, you all know what they are. It's when when you pass a budget that's not balanced, you have to have a supplemental. I think we've had 8. I've only been able to sign 1 budget, the very first one, and I hated it. I did it out of trying to get along with people. That didn't work very well. So I've never been able to sign a budget since. The answer to your question is yes. However, we need to understand that if you're going to have a balanced budget, we have to stay very tied to accounting standards and not allow the gimmicks that go on in government. We have what is called a cascade. I have had a balanced budget. I've had a surplus every year I've been governor because I'm a fiscal manager. But at the end of the year, we have a cascade that on June 30th, I might have 50 or 60 or $80 million surplus, and on July 1, out the window on special projects that were put into the budget. Very, very bad process. And so the answer is yes, if we stay on with accounting standards, generally accepted accounting standards, I'm all in. But if we're just going to call it a balanced budget and not balance the budget, then we're no better off than we have been in Maine since 1820. Anyone else? I see I'm over by 7 minutes, not bad. Usually it's about 10 or 15. You're in for a real treat with the next speaker. Thank you.